Hello, everybody. Michael Robertson Jr. here, and this is episode 16 of the Hallowed Horror Podcast. And of course, I have with me this evening my co-host, Mr. Jason Collins.
What is up? How you doing tonight, Mike?
I'm okay. I'm a little tired, but I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to push through. I'm going to do what we're all supposed to do and just deal with it, get the job done. Because let's be honest, this is the highlight of my day at this point. This is where I'm going to get to have some fun, talk about horror, which is always enjoyable, and just spending some quality time with you, my friend.
You know what? Likewise, I'm glad you're going to grind it out, be an adult about things. But this is just us hanging out, right? We're just having fun.
Be an adult and record my podcast where I talk about horror movies. Yes, that's what I'm going to do.
It's all about being an adult. I'm excited about tonight. It's gonna be a good night. I'm actually much more comfortable tonight. I've got a new chair, so I'm feeling good.
I'm glad for you that you finally got a new chair, and I'm so glad that you said that, because this is my opportunity now to tell a story that is going to expose you for what you are. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. It's been a few years. I think it's been maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. Jason and I were driving back from our buddy's golf trip that we take just about every year down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We were coming back and we were talking about our side businesses, our side hustles, if you will, and discussing kind of the financial side of things, where we were investing money, for different aspects of our business. And I was complaining about my chair that I had at my home office. It was just an old chair. It was a hand-me-down chair, actually, from somebody else that I used to work with. It wasn't great. I was uncomfortable in it. I hated spending long periods of time in that chair. And Jason then proceeded to give me this anecdote, and I think it was Tim Ferriss that you were telling this story. You had heard it from his podcast, maybe one of his blog posts, talking about spending money wisely for your business if it will benefit you, if it's something that's going to make you more comfortable to do better work, or be able to spend your time more wisely. Just not being cheap in areas where you really can't afford to be cheap. And you basically just gave me this whole pitch and told me to shut up and buy a new chair. Stop complaining about it. So I did. I got a new chair. I love it. I spent, a few $100 on it. It's an awesome chair. It's done well for me. And ever since I bought that chair, I've basically done nothing except enjoy my chair and then listen to you for 2-3 years complain about your office chair until it finally fell apart this week. So the moral of my story is, I guess, first of all, thank you for encouraging me to buy my chair because I love it. And also, you're a hypocrite.
Hypocrite. That's not the right word. I just have no problem telling other people how to spend their money. I can be as frugal as I want with my own business money. Okay. But you're right. It did literally fall apart. I was sitting in it one day last week, and the whole thing just cocked to the side, and I couldn't sit in it anymore. But my daughter, she decided that she was gonna tough it out. She was gonna sit in it over on her desk on the other side of the office. And then just a couple nights ago, it just fell apart completely. She hit the floor, and metal was just all over the place. It just really fell apart.
So
I'm a heavy sitter. I'm a hard sitter on my chairs.
So you're by you ignoring your own advice to me, you have done nothing but create a safety hazard in your house for your family. So
yeah, maybe so. But I did go out and I got a new chair. It's not my forever chair right now. It's not my next couple of years chair. It's just a cheapo chair, like $120 or something. As far as chairs go, office chairs, you know how they are.
They're stupid expensive.
They are. They're dumb. They're so stupid expensive. But I am gonna get a Titan chair. So
nice.
They're a few months out from shipping, so I'll deal with this one for the next few months until I get that new beauty in my office that I can sit in. I'm excited about it.
I think the brand is Secret Lab.
Secret Lab,
yeah,
but Titan's
the model.
The model that I'm going to get.
Yeah. If anybody at Secret Lab would like to sponsor this podcast, please reach out, because soon we'll be both using your chairs. I love mine. Anyway,
nice.
Enough of that.
Yeah, every time I come over and I sit in it, I love it. It's a great chair.
It's nice. Yeah. A couple other things interesting. Well, maybe not a couple, but something just yesterday that I thought was kind of exciting that was horror related. Sony had their big hour-and-a-half long gameplay presentation for the PS5. They also revealed the hardware for the first time, like what it would actually look like. And there was a new Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 8. I believe it's called Resident Evil Village or something like that. It looked pretty slick. It had kind of like a a European, like an old timey European, almost like Dracula, Victorian era, feel to it. I actually thought it might have been like a Wolfenstein game when I first started watching the trailer. And then it turned into Resident Evil, and I was pretty excited. It looked pretty slick. And they're also I don't know if it's a remake or a remaster, Demon Souls for PS5. So that's pretty cool. There's some good horror IPs that are getting the next gen treatment.
Very cool. Yeah. I think I'll definitely be getting the new PS5 when it comes out. I'm back and forth on which model. They've got the digital version with no DVD, Blu-ray, CD-ROM, and I think I'm just going to get the one with the actual disc player in it though, because our kids still watch movies on disc on Blu-ray and stuff like that. So we'll probably get that version.
Well, I'm going to have to get the one with the disc drive just because I ordered the Jaws 4K UHD, Ultra Blu-ray, whatever edition. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have at least one movie that I'm going to have to watch on something to get the full quality of all the audio and video. So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway. All right. So enough chit chat, banter, whatever you want to call it. Let's get into the episode. What are we talking about tonight? This is a movie, by the way, that we did the trailer impressions. It might have been the first episode of the trailer impressions that we do for our Patreon supporters. I think it was
the first one. I think it was like it was just last week that we did it, but
God, was it? Maybe it was last week. Maybe I'm so far gone that I'm mistaking the first episode for literally the last episode that we did. Anyway, I know we covered it. Yeah, I know we covered it for sure.
We definitely talked about it. This was actually the one that we talked about, where it has been the number one movie in the U.S. For the past few months or a couple months since about, simply because how long has it been?
It was released May 1st, and I think it was number one for several weeks after that, just because of drive-in movies.
Yeah, simply because it was one of the only movies that went to full production, but it drive-through or drive-in theaters. Right. Drive-through theaters, drive-in theaters.
Yeah. They just throw a DVD movie out the window and you catch it and go on.
You just gotta keep going in a circle and you just get bits and pieces of it.
Right.
So, it got a lot of chatter and a lot of praise for it too. I mean, it was looking pretty good. Mm-hmm. So the movie tonight is titled The Wretched. Originally released. IMDb says it released in 2019. I think it was just a few festivals, but theatrical release, like you said, May 1st, 2020. Runtime of 95 minutes. IMDb rating of 5.8 out of 10 based on 3,500 ratings. So not the best as far as that's concerned, but pretty good for a horror movie.
Well, I'm sorry. I'll say something about IMDb ratings. The IMDb user ratings are about as worthless as any rating you will find out there. To me, it's the IMDb user ratings is like the Goodreads user ratings for books. It's just a cesspool of people that want to bitch. That is mostly what it is. The Rotten Tomatoes score of this film is not actually too bad in terms of the critical release. It's a 74% fresh Rotten Tomatoes, but 48% on audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So
that's interesting. It's hard to tell. I mean, that's a damn good rating from Rotten Tomatoes. Figuring that it's it's a horror movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So this one was brought to us by IFC Midnight. They're putting down some just fucking great stuff lately, and this was from this was written and directed by two brothers.
Right.
I don't know who they are. Apparently, I've never seen anything else by them, but they're the Pierce brothers, and Drew and what was the other guy's name?
Brett.
Yep. And well, they did a good job. Actually, they did another horror movie, but I think it was more horror comedy, from what I can understand. And so they wanted to dive in a little bit further into something more gritty horror. And so while this one was for all intents and purposes a really good horror movie, it did have a little bit of comedy in there. So here and there. But anyways, it was a good movie. It was a fun watch. It was not the best horror movie I've ever seen, but it was a really easy, fun film to watch. What was your initial thought of it?
I think it did everything that I expected it to do after watching the trailer. and I think I enjoyed it. I'd watch it again. There was a part of it that I really enjoyed that maybe we'll touch on a little bit later. This movie did what I thought it was going to do from the trailer. There were some side like plot lines that I thought brought it down just a little bit overall, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, there was some stuff we'll talk about. There was a few moments that I really, really enjoyed with it. And yeah, the two brothers, Brett and Drew, the Pierce brothers, as they were labeled in the credits. I checked them out on IMDb because I hadn't heard of them either. I didn't see anything that I had ever. I mean, there's not a lot that they've done, and there was a couple of shorts in there. So this might be like from the writer director standpoint, their big movie. So it's kind of interesting to see people that have really kind of gone from we've made a couple shorts to I've made a full blown #1 movie in America, although with an asterisk next to it. You can still say I had a #1 movie in America for a few weeks.
That's a good one. So quick little synopsis, IMDb, right off of IMDb here. It says, a defiant teenage boy struggling with his parents' imminent divorce faces off with a 1,000-year-old witch who is living beneath the skin and posing as the woman next door. Very, very accurate.
Yeah, and that's really what the movie's about, with the exception of, this was the cool part about this movie. It's not that she, is just like this, she's this creature. She can affect people's memories. Like her main, like, I guess, weapon, aside from just being ruthless and ripping people open and getting inside of them, is she can cause people to forget their children, which she then preys on. She basically is kind of like the Pennywise of the woods. She's eating kids, to sustain herself, apparently. I mean, even down to the point that she had them kind of cocooned down in the tree. That led to one of the biggest, I thought, M. Night Shyamalan-ish kind of plot twist near the end of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this was a slightly different flavor of a supernatural horror story revolving around a witch. The witch in this film, named only the Wretch, in my mind, I think could be Rosina's sister from Hansel and Gretel. Albeit Rosina got all the culinary skills in the family. But the Wretch had a very clever way of getting her food without leaving too much of a footprint, for sure. While her mind control incantations were her bread and butter.
Yeah.
You see what I did there? Bread and butter. Yeah. Got it? That's good.
This guy's a fucking genius, man. He's so clever. That was the part I think I liked the most. Because when we watched the trailer, I said it looked creepy. I said, but it looked like a creature feature. That's really what it looked like to me, because that's what they were showing, kind of the scarier parts. Which this was. I mean, they focused heavy on the creature part of this, which really made it the movie that it was. But I liked the psychological aspect with the forgetting of the kids, because you even touched on it when we did the trailer impressions too. You were like, I don't understand what was happening when the kid came to the door and he was talking to the dad of the little boy, and he was like, I don't have a son. Like you caught that in the trailer. Like, what is he talking about? He doesn't have a son. Why doesn't he remember that he has a kid? That kind of thing. So they kind of, really, really played on that a little bit. Let's talk about the way this movie opens for a second, because I'm not sure what purpose it served, except just to show how old this witch was. The opening shot of the film is basically a babysitter showing up at a house to babysit, and she can't find the people, and she sees the little clues throughout the house that we will later learn are the signatures of this witch. You got the dying flowers. You had the family picture with the scratches across the face of the victim or the people she's preying on, and then of course the pretty gruesome opening scene down there in the basement where she's eating the child and then attacks the babysitter, and the husband is there and locks her in the basement to be consumed. They showed the witch's entire MO in that opening scene to prep the way.
I think that was probably the purpose of it, to really just kind of break down what's happening, exactly what's going on, what this witch does, or what this thing does. Because at that point, you didn't really know it was a witch.
Right.
You just thought it was some like weird thing. You really didn't even know that it was really a creature at that point. You just knew that something had happened to that mother, or supposed mother, and was eating her little baby there. her kid.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I don't know if you caught
It
this.
was
That
older.
the mother, the woman that turned around in that chair.
Yeah.
She was actually the the actress that played the witch or the wretch. I mean,
The one that was in costume, like the makeup and everything.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That was the only time you got to see her actual face in the movie.
Interesting. Yeah, it was. That was, and that was the title card. There is 35 years ago. So this opening scene took place a long time before we get to the actual movie.
And then we jumped to 5 days ago for
Yeah.
some reason. Did you pick? Did they ever figure out? Did they ever explain why it was 5 days ago?
I had the same question, and I had to stop and actually think about why because when the movie was over and the plot twist was revealed,
Right.
I started thinking to myself, when did the event, and I don't want to spoil it yet, when did the event happen that caused him to have done to have that happen? And
I had that same question.
And so now I think that's why there's the little bitty scene that they interject in between the 35 years earlier and the 5 days with him in the water. That's our breaking point. That's our stop point with him. And then it goes back 5 days previous. That's why. Because we had to show that time we're reliving his events up until that present moment in the water.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah. Anybody that's listening to us right now that has not seen this movie is like, what the hell are they talking about? They could not be more vague about what is going on.
Yeah. I mean, but the movie did a good job right in the beginning of that. You know, you don't really know what's happening. And honestly, I had forgotten about the water scene until the very end. And then, of course, just now, I never put the two and two together, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. This movie, it was actually, I mean, it was well written to the point that you had a lot of questions about what you were seeing in the beginning to a certain degree, and then they were kind of explained in the best order that they could have been explained. It was almost like little clues that were dropped throughout the whole thing, just like The Sixth Sense. I mean, this movie had a really strong Sixth Sense vibe to it at the end with what the reveal was. Is this a spoiler-filled episode, or is this a spoiler-free episode? I don't know how we talk about what we liked about this without putting some spoilers in here.
Yeah, it's got to be spoilery. I mean, how can we not talk about the film if we don't give some stuff away?
Right. Okay. So this is your official stopping point, listeners. If you have not seen this movie and don't want to have what I think is actually a fairly clever twist near the end spoiled, stop right here and then come back after you've watched the film. If you don't care about that kind of stuff or you have seen the film, by all means, please keep listening because we're going to talk about this twist because I thought it was actually pretty good. It's actually what took me from saying this movie's pretty cool to like, oh, that's really good. Like, I like that little tidbit there.
Yeah. And how they wrapped it all up too really quickly at the end there as well. I thought that was really nice. And all the little moments that felt weird, right? Throughout. And that's what was great. It felt weird, but you kind of just glossed over it, but it did. It felt off when they were doing it, especially like the Connect 4 scene. I was like, that's such a weird angle.
Yeah.
Why is he playing it that way?
Yeah.
It was so many good little parts like that. That then just lended itself well to the twist. I thought it was really, really clever.
Yeah. So we had the opening scene where we see what this witch is capable of. Kind of, we get again the whole roadmap of what she's going to do. We jump ahead 35 years and we jump on board with this, high school age kid, I guess, probably 17. Is he 17?
Yeah. I mean, this is a great time to kind of talk about some of the cast here because from what I can tell, it was a bunch of like kind of unknowns. I have never seen any of these people, right?
I hadn't either. I know that Jameson Jones, who played the dad, I kept thinking to myself, this guy looks like Greg Kinnear, like to a certain degree. I kept thinking that, but obviously it wasn't him. Yeah, John Paul Howard Piper, is it Curda?
Curda, yeah, she was the love interest slash I don't know, partner in crime.
Yeah, Jameson Jones, is it Ozzy or Aziz? Tesfaye.
Yeah.
Zara Mahler and Kevin Bigley are I think probably the top billed people.
Yeah. I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. Relatively unknown as far as I can tell, just based on what I've been scrolling through on IMDb, and I was trying to see if I recognized them from anything, and I couldn't come up with anything. But did a decent job. Anyway, John Paul Howard, who plays Ben, he's essentially the main character. Where he is going to visit. We meet him on a bus. He's going to visit his father. His parents are separated. There's obviously some tension there. He's had some issues in the past. He's got a broken arm. He has a cast on his arm. We know there's something happening. He seems to be a bit of a downtrodden young man, if you will, just right from the get-go.
Troubled teen, yeah.
Yeah. So he arrives at his dad's house, and this seems like a fairly small town, maybe like a touristy Maine vacation town, something like that.
Yeah.
Very Stephen King-ish in terms of the atmosphere and the environment. And
I thought the scenes at the dock, they took me right back to Jaws. It had like that 80s feel to it, and just that vibe in the actual the main room and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I thought it felt. I immediately was imagining it being in Jaws somewhere. The whole movie did a really good job of having that 80s feel to it, that sort of Goonies kind of grouping where the kids are getting together to fight evil. And so I thought that was a good feeling. But yeah, it looked like it combined quite a few different feelings in the movie.
Yeah, it was well shot for sure. I'll say this about this. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's my eyes. I don't know if it's my TV settings. I know I have my color on my TV set pretty close to all the official AV forum boards that these people do this kind of stuff, whether they're enthusiasts or professionals. I have the profile set up to what is supposed to be the most natural, best movie viewing color experience. And I have found with horror movies lately, and even some non-horror films lately, that there are scenes that are darker that I have a really hard time seeing. And I just feel like the screen is not bright enough. I don't have these things set right. I could see everything in this movie perfectly. I rented it on iTunes. It was I don't know if it was 1080 or 4K. I can't remember what the version was that iTunes has. But even it just looked really, really well lit, really well produced. Even the scenes that were in the dark, you could see what was happening. It all looked crisp. It all looked very cinematic. It was a well-made film, 100%.
Yeah, I don't think, in fact, I don't think there was any part of this film from a production standpoint that wasn't done well. The cinematography was done great. There was some really well thought out transitions from scene to scene. I thought the editing was really well done. I thought the sound design was really great. The score, the initial music tracks were pretty cool, right? They're pretty fun. But then the soundtrack after that felt a little basic, but effective for its needs.
Sure.
But the sound design around everything was super top notch. I enjoyed just being able to hear everything going on. Though I was wearing my monitor headphones while I was watching it, so I was just engrossed in the experience. But I thought it was the cinematography was top notch, and then also the visual effects were really, really great.
Practical.
95% of this film were all practical effects.
Yeah.
The visual effects director, Eric Porn, and his team were the ones that did all this. And he's worked with the Walking Dead franchise, and
that makes sense.
So a couple others, but yeah, they did. He worked on this movie, and he did just a killer job. I mean, it just knocked it out of the park with the way that witch looked.
Yeah, the way she looked and the way the gore was, produced, it was good. It was really, really good. You're right. The practical effects.
In fact, the only thing that I think I remember them talking about where they used some CGI, and it was only just to enhance the scene a little bit. There was two of them. I think one was the sex scene, where it was crawling up her back, that rot was. And then also the shower scene where it was looking down and she was on the ground and it was on her back again.
Right.
I think those are the only two scenes where they had to use a little CGI, and it was just a little bump, just a little push to get it to move a little bit. But yeah. Everything, all the rest was practical, which was really impressive. And I thought it lended itself really well to the way it made the movie feel real,
Yeah. The visual effects were really good. I mean, all the practical stuff they did with the gore and near the end where the hand was reaching out of Sarah's stomach, that was really cool. And then if you talk about the cinematographer, I purposely sought this guy out on IMDb because I wanted to see if he'd done anything that I've recognized. Because I thought there were some really, really well composed scenes, really well framed scenes in that movie. Never heard of this guy. I've never seen anything he's done before. He had, I think, probably the biggest list of stuff that he's done, but I hadn't seen any of it. Didn't recognize, I don't think, any of it. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many talented people out there that are making stuff that you just never even have heard of until they get a chance like this to be a part of something that's going to reach that wide audience. And this movie deserves to reach a wide audience. It's not an amazing film, but like you said, it's, you know, I've used this phrase before on this podcast. I consider this one of those like popcorn flicks, you know, like you can just, as a horror fan, you can have fun and enjoy the aspects of this movie that are doing what it's supposed to do and nothing more.
Yeah, I mean, this was not a new story with a new villain or a new plot, right? There was nothing fresh about this film, but it was executed very well with a no-name cast, a smaller budget, and extremely well done production.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah. The Witch, obviously the Witch in the Woods story has been done. The disgruntled teenager, the strained relationship with the parents has been done. The teenage love interest, the bullies. Yeah, all this has been done. The one thing that I think that was unique that put the spin on this story, again, for me, was the memory thing. The fact that not only was this, creature going after the younger kids and consuming them, but it was the fact that he could or she could convince the parents that they never existed in the first place. And again, that was the unique part, and that led to the reveal at the end, which really just kind of made this movie kind of stand up a little higher on its own, just, on its own two legs. This movie kind of stood up a little higher than a lot of the other films that maybe it would be lumped into with, in the future or in the past or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So the whole movie, from a plot perspective, is essentially the boy that we met on the bus, the teenager, Ben, who is living with his father, who is separated from, his mother. Their next door neighbors are the first victim, really, that we see of the witch, the wretch, if you will. I didn't know that was actually what she was called, was the wretch. So Ben he's aware of this. He actually sees the wretch at night. He hears her scurrying around and gets a glimpse of her, and then basically just turns into a stalker, trying to spy on the neighbors because he knows something weird is happening. He knows there's bad things happening. There's a young boy at the house who the boy's father is the manager, I guess, at a marina. They do, boat rentals and stuff like that, kayaks, what have you. The boy is a customer there. He was supposed to have a sailing lesson. They're kind of buddies to a certain degree. And the kid just vanishes one day. So now Ben's on even higher alert, and he knows there's something wrong. So the whole movie is essentially him going from, there's something weird happening, there's something bad happening, I've now seen this thing and I know there's something bad happening, and trying to convince others that bad things are happening with the neighbor. At the same time, he's getting blamed for some of the stuff that is happening because of his attitude, which I think is his own fault to a certain degree. And then also just the way everything gets set up, he is not well received in when he's delivering this news, which brings me to something that I have never understood in horror movies before. And I know it has to be done to drive the plot. But Jason, you and I are the best of friends. We have known each other essentially our entire lives, right? We're very close. Yeah. If I came to you tomorrow and I said, Jason, I think my neighbor is a witch. Hear me out. Here's the evidence. Would you immediately just dismiss me completely? You're crazy. I don't want to hear this. What are you talking about? Let's go play golf. Because that's what happens in all these movies. That's what happened in this movie. This poor kid who is struggling, who has this one close friend, this love interest, other teenage girl that he's kind of, starting this relationship with. She likes him, he likes her, and he tells her this, and he gives her the evidence, and she's not even paying attention. She thinks it's a joke, and she's like, whatever, dude, you're crazy. Like, why does nobody ever even pretend to take people serious in these kind of movies?
Like you said, there's got to be something to move the plot along, but you're right. And they did play it up pretty nice with him having a bit of a drug problem, in the past. So he had a reason He had a reason
Did the
for
girl
people
know
not to
that?
believe him. But I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You know, people have got to give them. You got to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, at least a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
at least maybe investigate, listen to the evidence, and then make your own decision, based on that. Not just immediate like, oh, I don't believe this. Just like in The Outsider, on HBO, based on the Stephen King book, like Ralph Anderson, the main police officer there, he was hell bent on refusing to believe that this supernatural entity existed, which was the reason for this awfulness that was happening. And it was the only reason that would ever really make any sense to everybody else. It was the only way this could be happening, but he completely refused to listen to it for the longest time. And that caused so many issues.
Well, that sort of brings me to my one and only issue with this movie was that it would have felt more, the story would have felt more deep if there was some sort of history of kids missing in this place, right? Because while the forgetfulness that she can force on people, that can only go but so far, right? There's gonna be teachers or friends of friends, friends of parents that will eventually be like, what the hell's going on, right? So it would have been nice to have like when he was doing his Google searching for he was searching up the signs and he found his actual witch and kind of what she does. I really wish we'd have dove into some sort of history from the town where there's for the past 200 or 300 years, as long as they can actually record history, that there's been this weird thing going on where kids just go missing and the parents die eventually or they go missing and things like that. And so having that rich history in the town would have allowed his love interest to have been on his side a little bit more, but still be able to participate a little bit. It'd have had a more of a Burbs feel at that point where they were both in on spying on the neighbor. And the Burbs, man, as soon as she came out of the cellar with the bag, the trash bag, and threw it in there, I was like, oh man, that's a scene right out of the Burbs. Dude, but I really did want some more history on that witch.
Do you think it's a Pennywise type thing? Like in It? I mean, it was like Pennywise came out every 27 years. Do you think that was the whole point of showing 35 years ago? Do you think she feeds for a period of time and then goes away into hibernation for? They never said that, but they
don't bring that up. But yeah, she was sort of cocooning her kids, down there. Maybe that is a situation where she just grabs a few kids and she can survive underneath the tree for X amount of years.
Yeah,
that's a good point too. But still, having some sort of history, there is a pattern that people can put together. Let's kind of see that pattern. Let's see that history. Yeah. I felt like there needed to be more depth to that story and a little more explanation on the wretch herself. I wanted more about her story.
Yeah. I saw I was reading some of the Rotten Tomatoes critic reviews, and I have no idea who it was. Somebody made the point that, it was a decent movie that, oh gosh, I can't remember exactly how they said this, but they essentially said where it kind of fell short on the screen. If it had been converted to prose, it could have been right up there with stories like, my brain is so fried right now. Doesn't matter. I have to look it up. Books that you would recognize in terms of kind of having the same feel with what was happening, like with, monsters consuming children that had that richer history. It was very dramatic kind of thing. I have to see if I can look it up. Maybe when we take a break, I'll take a look for it. But it made a lot of sense because I think it touches on what you just said. Let the Right One In. That's the book I'm trying to think of. Let the Right One In, which they also made a movie out of. If this was prose, there probably would have been some more deep diving into, the research potentially that the boy did about what was happening in the area, or maybe some more explanation about the witch. If Stephen King had wrote this book, we would know every aspect of this witch's history and where she came from.
Gotcha. So you think it's just a matter of just a novice writing team?
No, I don't think that's it. I think it's I think it's the type of movie. I think it's the genre. I don't think this movie set out to explain a lot. I think they wanted to make a fast-paced creature feature, and they did that. I think they did what they wanted to on screen without ever potentially boring the audience with exposition.
Okay. I still don't think it would have required a lot of exposition to have a little history. They showed the whole Google search. Like, just throw in a couple more minutes of that and start showing a little history of what was going on.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be a big thing, but I want what I want, okay?
Clearly. Well, I mean, just call up Brett and Drew Pierce and say, hey, guys, can you explain to me a little bit more about this witch, please? I'm sure they'll be happy to. We should get them on the podcast. We'll reach out to them.
Let's see if we can get them on the podcast.
Yeah. We'll
Why not?
Because I really enjoyed the movie a lot. And
I did too.
I never got bored. I mean, I will say that I watched it. I never got bored. The one plot point that I just didn't know where it fit, except just to show. We talked about this with Halloween, the 2018 Halloween, where we were talking about what's the point of the granddaughter of Laurie Strode's granddaughter, because they focused so much on her. Right. With her boyfriend, and then the dance, the Halloween dance or whatever it was like she really didn't do anything. Like, there was nothing that she did that was significant, and the only thing I said was she was the connection back to Laurie. Like, Laurie Strode had a connection with her almost more so than her own daughter. Right. This movie was kind of similar in that fact, where the plot line with the boy and the girl that worked at the marina, Mallory. Yeah, that was cute. You expect there to be a love interest. It's summer. They're working together, whatever. But the whole thing, like with the party and then the drama with the bullies and, the skinny dipping scene where she got all mad at him because the other girl was flirting with him. Like, none of that, like, it did nothing. Like I said, with Halloween, it just showed up. It just showed that this guy was a kid and we were seeing his normal life. And it wasn't just like, hey, we meet this kid and he does nothing but deal with this monster for the whole thing. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think they probably set out to just hit on every horror trope that they could in the movie. And they used it well. None of it felt forced to me. Like all of his little things that happened, it was all fine. He went to a small town. He met a girl that he really likes. He got handled by the high school or the local bullies. There was all this little extra, teen drama happening that just happens in every teen movie, right? It just is what it is. They threw it in there because why not? I think they probably could have done a little bit less and added a little bit more history to the witch, but whatever. But none of it felt like overly creative or new, which isn't a bad thing, honestly. It was just there. So
yeah,
I don't know. You're right. It didn't add anything to the story, but I don't think it necessarily took away from it either.
No, this is to me one of those situations where you have a difference between prose literature, like we just talked about, and a film. I think the audience can get bored a lot faster in a movie. You have a different type of audience that you're going in for a horror film, especially one like this, which the trailer makes it look like a very fast-paced, jump scary kind of creature flick. You don't want to slow it down, and I think you can't spend a lot of time diving deeper into the kid's emotions, right? With the teenage stuff, or like you were talking about with the witch's history. I think you put this in a book. And I think that you have a much deeper connection with the Ben character than you got out of the movie.
Yeah.
I think that's what the situation would be there. That's me personally, because I can imagine reading chapters about, just like in It. My favorite aspect of the book It is the relationships of the kids and their friendships and their bonds and the drama that they're dealing with, the coming of age story that just happens to be wrapped in the candy coating of the horror section of it. This movie's not like that. This is definitely the horror film first, and we're going to humanize these characters just enough to make you care a little bit, but we're not going to dwell on it, kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. I'll take it. I'll accept it.
All right.
This is probably a good time to take a break, and when we come back, we can talk about the end of the movie.
Correct, because that was the best part, if you ask me. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Taking a break, and we will come back and talk about the end. All right, we're back. So, this movie was written and directed by Brett and Drew Pierce, and also script revision by M. Night Shyamalan, because this twist in this movie had such a Sixth Sense feel to me, but different. I mean, it was same, but it was different, and to me, it was effective because I didn't expect it, and like you said, there were so many clues that were dropped throughout some of the scenes where it was like you noticed it, but you didn't dwell on it, but it stuck out. And then at the end, when you saw it all come together, you were like, oh, well, that was a fairly intelligent thing to do. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was good.
I agree. You nailed it on the head with a Sixth Sense feeling where it was like they were just kind of laying those breadcrumbs the whole time. And then you watch it, the second time you watch it, you're not going to be able to see anything else but that, right? It's probably going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are really, really great ending. You want to build it up a little bit?
Sure. Well, I mean, we mentioned, and it's this again. This is one of those things that's kind of hard to fully explain without you having to watch the movie to see how they show this visually. But this witch's main trait is she preys on these little kids, and she can basically affect their family members' lives to erase the memory of that child, so that they don't know that kid is missing. She eventually seems to kill most of the family members anyway, as well, to a certain degree, but maybe not always. But the big twist to this is when we meet Ben, the main character, the teenager, right from the get-go, even the opening scene with him, where the older lady on the bus says to him, "You're quite the little artist, aren't you?" When I saw that, she's talking to Ben because he has a cast on his arm, and there's something written on it that he looks down at. I thought to myself instantly, she is talking to him like he is such a little kid, like I thought, what a sweet little grandmother like voice that she's using for this teenager that she doesn't know. Right. And that is just one of a few instances in the movie that are laid out for you, because in the end you find out that Ben, the main character, he has a younger brother that is 6, 7, 8 years old, and he's been there the whole time.
Throughout the entire movie.
Never seen him. He's been there the whole time.
He's been there the entire time.
And you find out that he has had his memory affected by this witch, which goes back to what we were talking about very, cryptically in the beginning of this episode, where there was the 5 days ago title card transition that was put up in between the 35 years ago and then the story that we then get presented with in modern day. And Jason's question is, why was it like that? Why did it say 5 days ago? And again, there's a little snippet of scene where the boy is basically, his head is submerged in water. You don't really know what's happening to him at that point. And it kind of acts as the bookend for the story, for this chapter of the boy's life, because something happens later where he's fighting the witch who is, taking over another person, so to speak. And he's getting drowned in the water, and you kind of then recognize that as the moment probably where he started to get that memory affected for the boy. Anyway, so basically you get the whole story told in the order it was told in, but with Ben's memory having been affected to not remember his younger brother. And the part that it hit me that just confused the absolute hell out of me was when he saw the picture of his family, or the dad picked up the picture of his family, and there was another person in the picture. The brother was there in the picture, and I thought to myself, I don't remember seeing that little kid, when the picture was on the refrigerator the first time. And I was so confused. Like, did I just completely black out, like not see him before? Like, I didn't even realize still at that moment that there was an issue there. It wasn't until the reveal that it all clicked, which I thought just made it even more brilliant.
Yeah, her memory voodoo magic that she was able to do, it almost felt like she was able to do it to the viewer. That's what I loved about it. It was almost like you also forgot about this. Like you felt like something was there, but you didn't know what.
Right.
And then at the end, it's like, oh, there's another kid here, right?
Yeah.
It was so much fun. There was one other instance that I don't remember them showing in the flashbacks, and it just hit me as we were talking. Do you remember when she went to sign his cast and she said,
just going to say that. Yep.
What's that?
I was just going to talk about that.
Yeah, she said, "Oh, there's barely any space on here," and I remember thinking there was just one thing on there. I was like, "What do you mean there's no space?" I thought it was like at the time I thought she was being
I
sarcastic.
did too. Yep, I thought it was a sarcastic remark too, because I went from like that's not that's a filming like continuity error, like they forgot to put enough crap on the cast, and she has that line they were just going to sell it, and then I was
Right.
like, oh, she's just being a smart ass, she's flirting with them, being
Yeah.
sarcastic, and then when you find out what it really was, to the point that like he couldn't see on his cast the drawings that his younger brother, who he had forgotten, had done. It was such, that
Crazy.
that might have been that, and the Connect Four were probably my favorite. Like just in your face, we're showing you the truth, but you're not going to get it.
Yeah, the Connect Four, man, that was so good. I remember thinking right at that moment, other than it was lit really well, because they just put it out in the open and they just had a lantern. And I thought, what a great way to force yourself to just accept how well lit this was, right? It's just you're just nowhere near anything. You just got this one light. So I was just thinking that at the time. But then they showed him playing Connect Four, and it was just angled so weird away from the father. And I was like, I don't understand how dad's playing with him.
Right.
It just seems such a weird angle. It threw me off so much, but I didn't think anything else of it. I was
No.
like, that was weird. Okay, fine. And then he just moved on. Man, it was such a good twist. I loved it so much.
Yeah, I was the Connect Four. I was thinking to myself because I wanted to go back and rewatch the movie today if I had any downtime, but I didn't, because I wanted to kind of go to some of those scenes and, like you said, and kind of pick up what was happening now that I know what the truth is, because I think he puts more than one token in the board, as if somebody else had like made a move in between somewhere. I wanted to verify that, because
Oh,
if he just put one in while he was having the conversation with his dad, you could just be like, oh, they're playing, but the dad's taking a break right now. He's going to go swing around after he finishes his beer or whatever. Um, if he puts more than one in, that should have been the flag. Like, what is happening? Is he playing by himself? Like, is he just bored and they found this game on the table and he's just doing it mindlessly? Like, everything that happened was so plausible to just be some sort of fluke, or some sort of that you could just gloss over it, like whatever. That's just weird, like the cast thing. But the
yeah,
fact that you learned that it was all done very strategically was really cool.
yeah, yeah. At what point do you think she spell her cast on him?
Cast her spell. What did she
Spell her. Oh,
spell
I'm
her
sorry. At
cast?
what point do you think she cast her spell on him?
My brain froze for a second. I was like, what? What did you
Mine
just
just
say?
fell out of my ears there. I'm sorry.
On the I think it was the moment that he had the interaction with it had to be the interaction somehow in the house before he got with the cop in the car, because I still say that because that was the moment that we saw as the bookend on the front, separating the 35 years ago and the 5 days ago was when the cop was attacking him. I think it had something to do with in that time frame where he was at the house and they had arrested him for assaulting Sarah, because she was in Sarah at that point, right? When he slashed her with the knife and she came after him, remember? In the
Yeah.
kitchen, she had that real quick attack at him and he slashed her and then everything went back to normal. I think it had something to do in that time frame that he got affected just because of that scene in the beginning. Like I said, I keep using this phrase. It was like the bookends of his memory.
Okay.
Do you have an alternate theory? I'd love to hear it.
I don't actually. I remember her talking to him very closely when she came over looking for her son, and she went and she was outside the screen door and he went right up to the screen door.
Mhm.
At that point they were right there next to each other, but she only said something like, "You're a very stupid boy," and she said that to him. So I don't know if she's able to just like transfer whatever she wants over top of any voice, or what, because it seemed like they showed her talking in such a way, like a very um, in a very intentional way, talking to him in that very quick scene when they cut back to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was when it was, and then it just takes time for it to take effect. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not sure either well, I have no idea. I'd have to almost. This is another one of those moments where like I'd kind of like to read the screenplay and see if there's anything explained in there.
Right.
I'm not sure. I will say I'm so glad you said this because it was something I want to talk about. I was talking about the cinematography earlier. That scene at night where she comes to the screen door and he's at the top of the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that scene. That might be the creepiest scene in the movie to me. Like the way that was positioned, just because they have that one shot where that's supposed to be from his perspective, where he's standing at the top of the stairs and looking down, the shadowy, dark stairway to the front porch landing, and she's just behind that screen door. And at first, you see her just in a white dress with red on it, and you can't really tell, is that a pattern? Is that blood? Like, what is all over her? I thought that was a really beautiful shot. And then the conversation that he has with her, the shots of her speaking just so up close on her face, and then the actress's performance was just really, really creepy as well. I love that scene. Like that, I think I actually legitimately got a couple chills when she was talking to him at one point in that conversation. Like it was pretty slick. I really enjoyed that scene.
Yeah, that was a good scene too. I mean, I enjoyed that scene as well. I think, without just giving the end away, I don't think we really need to talk about it. I mean, things wrap up. It wraps up back at the witch's lair, back in her tree hole.
The climax is at her tree hole.
Yeah.
That's
well, it was interesting. I saw
right.
an interview. What was that?
That doesn't sound right. Sorry. The climax.
Right. I was watching an interview with both the Pierce brothers, and they were talking about they had this tree when they were growing up in their front yard, and it had this, had one of those knot holes in the bottom of it, and that's where they got the inspiration for that, because they remember thinking as kids how scary that hole was, because they could actually put their whole arm into it and touch something on the bottom, but they were always so scared of what was underneath that. They talked a little bit about the witch itself. They kind of cherry picked all the best things that they liked from all of the previous history's witches, and threw this into the Wretch, which was kind of interesting how they came up with that. And so anyway, that's where the climax happens. It's back at the tree hole, and it's a very intense scene. It was really well done. His little fight with the witch right there at the end too, and then you got to suspend some disbelief. I don't know where the hell Dad came from.
That was my one biggest gripe about that film, was as soon as that happened, I just thought, how did he even know where they were? Like,
yeah, I literally I just kind of put my hands up, like, where the fuck did he come from? Like, honestly. But stuff's got to happen. You get that, but it didn't end there for me. My second biggest problem with this movie was the very end.
Yeah.
I get where they were going, what they were doing with it, but I don't understand how that's going to work, because she was in that other body for 10 minutes and it was rotting on her. So how is she able to stay in this one and remain so normal and calm?
Yeah.
And then, B, how the hell did that happen? When did that happen? I mean, I just didn't like the way that ended. It felt, that's the one part of the film that I didn't like, that it felt forced.
So it would have had to happen. And basically if you've watched it, but if you haven't, at the end, after everything is over and you think that it's all well and good, it turns out that Mallory could potentially be the new carrier for the Wretch. She's the one who's being inhabited now. And I agree with you.
This isn't just a possession thing, right? I mean, this witch literally,
it's like a
puppeteers,
like a parasite. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of eating you from the inside out.
Yeah.
I don't really understand, like you said, where it could have happened, because the only time that she came in contact with it was at the tree when it was getting killed, and I don't understand why it happened. I'm a big fan of open endings. Horror is a genre that is notorious for open endings. But this is one where I felt like maybe there was just one extra reach too far, because to me, the movie was already strong with the big reveal about the brother. Like, that would have been enough for me to have that reveal followed by the climax at the tree, and then, you know, have the happy ending. Have the family drive off into the sunset and just give us that moment of being happy. Because this is a type of film that it would have lent itself well. This was not a super serious movie that had to have some dramatic, deep, thoughtful ending. Like, just give us that happy ending after all the drama's over, and it would have been fine. I don't understand that last reach, just because I don't know when it could have happened, like you said, except at the tree where the thing we're pretty sure was literally killed. So
yeah, and I would have totally been fine with them driving off, and then the camera, because the camera panned up way in the sky, right? I would have been totally fine if the camera panned up and then panned back down into the woods, back to where the tree was burnt up, and then kind of went down underneath. And you didn't see anything, but you just heard that noise she made. Like, that would have been fine, right? Okay, well, they didn't actually kill her. They thought they did, but she didn't. She's not dead. That would have been fine. But the whole thing with her taking over this body and all of a sudden being able to do something that she hasn't been able to do the entire movie, threw me off.
Yeah. Because when she took over the mother initially, the mother of the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Instantly, that mother spoke weird, right?
And moved weird.
Yeah, she was off from like the beginning. When she took over Sarah briefly in the house, she was talking to him completely normal, right? Like she was Sarah until he realized there was something off, and then she got dark. So it would have to be the same now with Mallory. The exchange with him and Mallory at the dock at the end when he's getting ready to go off with his family again, she's talking completely normal. She's moving normal. And you would have to assume at this point that it's been at least a day or two since the incident in the woods. So you're right. How has she not been like broken down by this thing already? There's some continuity issues. There's some plot holes here for sure. The open ending that I think I might have been okay with is if she gave him the flower. It was a real flower instead of the fake flower.
Right.
And he was holding it in the car driving away, and the camera, went down to it and the flower started to die in his hand. I would have been okay with that, because then you'd been like, well, who is it? Like, who there is it now? That would have been pretty slick to me personally.
That would have been good too. I like that one too.
But yeah, overall, good movie. It was fun. This would have been a fun movie to see at a drive-in. I mean, you can imagine just in the dark, the night sky, seeing this, hearing it through your car speakers. Like, I think it could have been a good drive-in movie. I'm glad they released it as a drive-in movie, because this is one of those films that I think you release it at a drive-in during this, situation we're in right now, and people show up and they enjoy it for what it is. They have fun. And it's a great movie. It deserves an audience. You release this movie in a theater alongside other big blockbusters, and I think it doesn't get nearly the reception it's probably deserving of. And if you go straight to video on demand without any of this fanfare hype behind the drive-in numbers, I think it suffers there too. So I'm really happy for these guys and this movie to have kind of emerged out of the ashes of what's happening right now, to have this kind of reception, because it was a great movie. I mean, I aside from the plot holes, which again, we're talking about a horror film here. I mean, there's always going to be plot holes.
Yeah,
it was fun. I enjoy watching it. It's not too long. It has its high moments, a clever twist, good writing, fantastic lighting. I stand by that. Good cinematography, and a great cast from people I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely a very easy and fun horror movie to watch.
Yeah.
They were just probably like right place, right time with the timing of the movie. And honestly, I think it's well deserved. It's a really great movie, and I think it's probably going to be one that sort of catapults them. I can't wait to see some of their coming projects.
Yeah, I think the guys, I could be wrong about this, but I want to say that the guys that did the Pet Sematary remake that came out a couple of years ago, maybe it's a little over a year ago now, almost 2 years ago. I don't know. Year and some months ago.
Okay.
I'm like damn convinced now that I'm going to get this timeline right. I think they were fairly unknown as well. I think they had done some smaller stuff, and then some, and I remember hearing a story about this, and they basically just, I don't know if they had to submit something, but they got the job for Pet Sematary, and it was like a huge deal. Like all of a sudden you go from like a relatively unknown group, and then they're giving you a Stephen King IP. It's like, oh boy, here's some pressure. Let's go make a movie. By the way, I really liked the Pet Sematary remake, and I know a lot of people didn't. I don't know why. I thought it was good, but maybe I'm just easy to please. I don't know.
No, maybe we need to do an episode on it and see if we can break it down a little bit.
I think an interesting thing to do with Pet Sematary would be to watch the original and then watch the remake and kind of do a comparison. I hate comparisons of old versus remakes, but like this is one that I think has been very polarizing for some reason. And there's a significant plot change between the original and the novel and then this remake. So yeah, that could be interesting. Maybe we'll do that as a Patreon episode, just because it's a little. It could be a divergent from what we usually do,
and maybe even a bit lengthier.
Yeah. Anything else, Jason, aside from what we've already talked about with The Wretched?
No, nothing else to add. It was a good movie. It was a fun watch, and I'm glad we got to watch it and talk about it.
Yeah. It's available right now. I mean, this is June of 2020. It's available on iTunes and Amazon Prime to rent. A couple bucks if you want to check it out. We enjoyed it. So, guys, this has been episode 16 of the Hallowed Horror Podcast. We have talked about The Wretched. We both really enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoyed this podcast, we would love it and really appreciate it if you could jump over to the podcast platform of your choice and leave us a review. Reviews do go a long way in helping people get noticed, so we would definitely appreciate that. Also, if you have not checked out our Patreon page, we have some really cool stuff going on over there. Patreon.com/Hallowed Horror. Check it out. We'd also appreciate it. Until next week, hope you guys stay safe, be well, watch some awesome movies, and we'll talk soon. Bye.